This is Epic Challenge, where we discuss, debate, and dedicate 20 minutes each week to a hot topic in the world of Warhammer. If you give a damn about tabletop gaming, then this is the show for you. Now, here are your hosts, Kicker and Nicky Dee.
Hey everybody, we are here for Epic Challenge. You've got Nicky Dee, that's me, and you've got Kicker. Kicker, what are we doing here? What is this show?
We are a show that's going to, as our lovely Steve Joel told us, he is doing our intro, of course. You got to get the best, right?
Of course.
Little debates each week, kind of having a special expert that's going to be able to, enlighten our audience. But Nick, there's been a lot of changes since I guess we were last on air. You've become quite the killer, winning event after event after event.
Some top placings, or at least at the local RTTs, and we'll talk a little bit here what we've been doing in Warhammer. And Kicker, you've also been having a great go of it at doing what you do best, which is running and Warhammer events and putting out some of the greatest stuff there that you can with Green Banner, making both events and we'll talk about this at a later point, but leagues that players are getting into as well. But Kicker, that's only part of what we're here to talk about today. We are here to talk about other things in the Warhammer community, the Warhammer hobby. So let's get into it and let's introduce our guest for today.
You're right, Nick. This show is streamlined. We are cutting out the BS and let's get straight to the stuff, right? Nick, you're going to introduce our guest. This guy is a personal friend of mine. I have broken bread with him multiple occasions. He is a legend within our community. Nick, take it away. Who do we got tonight?
It's the man who perhaps needs no introduction in Warhammer, but we're going to be bringing him on screen here in about 3 seconds. But he goes by the name Adam Camilleri. He's presenter and commentator for Games Workshop with the Twitch coverage. Also, you may hear him on Art of War Down Under, and then also the Warhammer Meta Chasers, which is the formerly the Thursday show with Paul Murphy and Dustin Henshaw. So a man who's got his voice in very many places. But Adam, welcome to Epic Challenge. How are you doing today? What's going on?
G'day, boys. Beautiful to be joining two such wonderful gentlemen on this nice Wednesday morning, Australia time. A little bit in the future, so got a little bit more of the guard juice to sprinkle upon you, because we just got 12 more hours with the book, that kind of stuff. But yeah, my great pleasure to be here. Really lovely to join Kicker and Nick on any dang thing that they do, and yeah, my great pleasure. Lovely.
Well, as is tradition on our show, we want to keep ourselves accountable. We quickly need to check in and see, how we are still staying involved with the hobby. You painting anything? You do anything cool? I myself am getting ready for a tournament. I'm bringing my guard, and with all those new guard models, I've been painting nonstop. I'm bringing a ton of artillery. Nick, I know you're busy as well, right? You've got something on your plate.
Yep. Been keeping myself busy with Blood Angels, and they're actually the army that I have the most of, highest volume of points, most army in my display case. But most people know me for playing, Death Guard or Demons. So that part, we're getting set and figuring out what we're doing there. But yeah, I've been doing really well. I've been doing really, really well with the Blood Angels. Won a trios event, and I'm going to be running them for the next couple of months as well. So I'm looking forward to that. All right. Adam, what about you? You already mentioned the Imperial Guard. You are a known Guard aficionado, so you have to be loving the right here and right now with this Guard Codex.
I am, but I've actually put down the book. I've actually, for the first time in 10 years, I'm not calling myself a Guard main.
Wow, that's news right there.
For literally a decade, all I've played is Guard and Marines of some variety, and I've decided I'm done. I'm checking out. And I'm going to be a Knights player for a little while.
Okay.
Just do you know
Chaos
the biggest
or
reason?
Chaos or Imperium?
Both.
Oh, all right, cool.
Just no loyalty. Just no loyalty in this skin anymore. Just gonna just jumps back and forth, whichever one I feel like playing, whichever models I like better on the day. But in addition to that, I'm also working on some old world stuff, and that's actually the reason I stopped the Guard, because I looked at my Guard army, and I'm like, I'm close to 20,000 painted points, and I still have so much I need to do for this codex stuff, and I'm like, I think I'm burnt out. I think 10 years of painting the guardsmen was enough, and I can still play 3/4 of all the lists that I want to play. So it's not like it's going to be a problem that I don't have XYZ.
We don't want to get derailed, but I gotta ask, what faction for Old World? Come on, who do you love?
Ogres. Ogres was what I left off playing.
Yeah.
When they blew it up. The Maniacs. And so I'm starting back where I left off, but I have grand plans to do some dwarves after that.
Dude, I love the dwarves. If I was going to play old world, dwarves have my heart already. I don't know, something about it.
Yeah.
I'm short, so I have this like relation, like the kinmanship here. I like other short people. I just get
I
along
mean,
with it. So,
yeah, the Tolkien trio,
yeah.
dwarf, orc, elf.
Yeah.
They're the holy trinity of
That's all I
fantasy IP. And so yeah, those are the three that like always get, except for the elf. Sorry, they never trust an elf.
Never
That always get my heart.
All right. Well, Nick, why don't you explain the show rules? Because we got to keep it, clear so that our guest knows what is, required here, and our audience also knows what's up.
Yeah. So the show is Epic Challenge, which obviously you may be used to that in a term of gaming or when you're LARPing in the woods with your friends. But for the purposes of this show, Epic Challenge, we are going to be discussing the hottest topics in Warhammer. They may be the hottest topics today, or they may be evergreen hot topics in the hobby in the community of Warhammer. So one or both of our hosts, and for tonight, Kicker, you're going to be serving as our host. We'll be presenting a topic of debate relevant to Warhammer, the Warhammer community, and our guest will be providing their informed, educated, or maybe just passionate opinion about, it doesn't have to be, you can just be passionate. It doesn't necessarily have to be educated, Adam, but opinion about this topic, and you're going to help us understand the viewpoint or your strong viewpoint on this. The other guest or host, in this case, I'll be working as the other. I'll be providing alternate viewpoints or maybe counterpoints to Adam. We're going to be providing some other thoughts to it, and what we're going to try to get to is what is the imperial truth of this topic, or is it really just a deception by the chaos gods? So tonight, Kicker, again, you're going to be taking over as the host. Adam is going to be our guest of note, and then I'll be providing the counterpoints. Now, Kicker, with that, if I were an Imperial Commissar, I'd be now giving you the order to move, and let's get things rolling for tonight's episode.
All right, folks. Our topic of discussion tonight is what can we learn from the world's best metas? Nobody is more of an expert on the global platform of 40K than Mr. Adam himself. He's seen the world from different perspectives, and he hopefully can give us good insight. So let's go straight into question number one. Adam, is there one region of the world that consistently produces the best players? And if so, why is that?
Okay, so this is a very hard question to answer without pissing off so much of the world. Uh, so the easy answer is Poland.
Okay.
The easiest, quickest answer is Poland, because on the world stage, on the international level, international competitive level, where truly the world comes together and battles it out, they have shown to be the most consistent winning team at the WTC level, and the one that podiums the most, and like they have more silvers than anyone else has golds,
Mhm.
more bronzes, and they
Yeah.
have more golds than anyone else.
Wow.
So that would be the easy answer.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
easy answer is just like they just straight up build like monsters
Yeah.
in that nation.
Do you have a reason
Um,
why that is by any chance? Is just because they're just a
Yeah.
better player? Like, what's going on there?
So they have a very compacted population, like so they have very, very large population centers like Warsaw and a couple of other regions. They're not too far away
Not
from
really
each other in
Adam, yeah.
any one direction, so they find it easy to practice and verse each other. In addition to that, it's a culture thing. It's very much a culture thing. It's a culture of excellence, where
Ah,
essentially about say probably about 15 years ago, maybe sorry, more than that. Sorry, I forgot how long ago 15 years ago. Maybe about 2005.
okay.
Like, so we're talking 20 years ago. uh, you know, competitive 40K was in its infancy. And nations that started on the strong right foot when the international competitive scene was in its infancy, and the two major players back then was Poland and Germany. Funnily enough, they were right next to each other. Those two teams shot right to the top of the competitive sphere of international 40K, and they have, via a culture of excellence, by knowing that they are good enough to win and by maintaining that excellence, because they started at the top, they have found it easier to remain at the top.
That's
Because
fair.
essentially all it boils down to is like the first couple of teams that they sent were superstars, and they've just kept breeding superstars into that pressure cooker.
Yeah.
It's almost like a master stock You know, in a soup kitchen that you never quite lose. You got these
Or a sourdough bread, right?
Or-
You got-
correct. You have a bunch of killers, yeah, and every couple of years you rotate a couple of killers and you push in more guys who might become killers, and a couple of them become killers, and then you rotate more out, and you just keep this kind of stable of very strong players churning over. Now there are some cultures, there are some nations that are putting a very strong foot forward for similar performances.
Yeah, you can't say Australia, man, just because you're from there. You can't.
I'm not going to be saying Australia. I'm
Okay,
not going to say Australia. Don't worry. I'll dodge the nepotism bullets
All right,
from
thank you,
people
thank you.
and shoes. And yeah, France. France is the very first. France is I suppose, the new era possible version, and they're putting a foot forward for such a statement because they have like infinity players. They just have so many players. And so the problem for them is picking the right players every year and, brewing this. But just the fact that they have so many players, they have such a strong scene. It's essentially the three places that are like really, really churning at the moment 40K wise is all kind of in the same region. It's France, Spain, and the UK. They're all just kind of exploding exponentially in the competitive sphere, going from tournaments with 100 players to multiple hundreds and hundreds of players, essentially in the last like 2 to 3 years.
Yeah. And that was going to be my counterpoint here for you, Adam. I mean, we obviously you addressed it right from the go. From the team Poland and Poland and Germany from a team standpoint. Don't disagree with that. Those guys are the killers when it comes to team play. They've had that part set. Thinking singles play, solo play. Right now, it's hard not to argue that England isn't at the top of the pile, right? I mean, and we're going from, if you're big on, ELO as a ranking, you got a lot of Brits that are up there. If you're going based on ITC right now, obviously Josh Roberts just won from the ITC this past year. And obviously the game's from England. So to me, it's one of those things where it's like, if we're talking about what's the best, where the best coming from. And also, I mean, England is not that far of a hop, across the water to be getting to some of those other events. Now they have, I know that there is a strong in WTC play. There is a strong mentality of anyone but England to win it. And it's been a little while since they've been at that level. But again, singles play, if we're talking what's the best meta, I mean, they've got huge events there. They've got huge events there all the time. England's got to have a play up there, right?
Yeah. So exactly right. It's hard to say that England isn't producing some of the best players in the world at the moment. So the only contentions that I would say is that because England is such a self-contained microcosm of its own meta, like the wild thing about England is that you have so many premium, amazing, big tournaments. There's no need to travel and mix with other metas. And so it's very hard to determine the quality of a team that only plays in its own conference, if that makes sense to Americans.
Yeah, very fair. That's very fair.
And so the way to do it is you got to zero in on the times where there's a mixing pot, where there's a mixing pot of metas, mixing pot of nationalities. And the contention to the UK one is that, well, it would be hard to say that the UK players are better than American players, for example, because of the LVO results, where we had 4 of essentially the best players in the UK, 4 of the top players in the top 10. Sorry, the 4 of the top 5 in the UK. Nassim, Josh Roberts, Inez Wilson, and Kyle Grundy all making the trip over to the LVO, and only Josh Roberts made the top 10.
Yep.
That is 8, as far as I can tell, 8 Americans. 1 Canadian, Ridvan Martinez, Scary.
I mean, again, Scary is the own thing. He keeps getting Drakari nerfed, and at some point, Scary is just going to get nerfed himself. But that's a topic for another day.
So, what you can say about the UK players is that in their meta, they are the monsters. They are in their pond, and it's a very big pond, very deep pool. It's an ocean. They are the big sharks. But you have to look at when people mix up, where the metas collide, who comes out on top. And of course, that was talking literally about 4 UK players. I know there was a couple of others, probably closer to 10 or 12 UK players came over for the LVO, contending literally against 1,000 Americans. Not exactly even Stevens. It's not 50-50.
The numbers against them. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
okay, we're going to go right to the question number 2, and actually you set us up very nicely because we were just talking about the UKTC and how big those events have gotten and how
Yeah.
frequent those events have gotten. Where is the most growth in the competitive scene? Like, where is that happening? Who should we be watching? I mean, what countries, what regions are just exploding in popularity? I know France, you said, is very popular, but I mean, it seems like everywhere in the world is growing. But is there certain parts that are just really, really growing?
Yeah, like so I said those three I said before,
Yeah,
France, Spain, and the UK are all the ones that just look like they're freaking doubled or tripled in the
yeah,
last 2 years.
yeah.
It's like ridiculous. The
I
United
mean, the
States is one.
average UKTC event is 250 plus, right? For the big ones,
Correct.
right? I
It's
mean,
essentially
like,
And there's
essentially everyone's a super major now at
yeah,
this point,
everything's a
yeah,
right?
super major.
yeah, and there's essentially one every month,
Yeah, if you
essentially.
like you said, no need to travel.
Yeah. Why
Wow.
why leave your pond?
Yeah.
So they need to be careful because if they get too used to only playing the UKTC meta, which is its own little format, they will find themselves struggling when they come over to more LVOs, ETCs, WTCs, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I want to highlight the United States here.
Yeah.
This is the time I'll throw you guys your first little bone, and
Here
it's
we
not for
go.
singles. It's not for singles play. There, it's teams.
Yeah.
You guys have decided that teams is a real way to play the freaking game. Finally,
Yeah.
everyone else knew. Everyone else knew for a decade, and the United States, in true United States fashion, like it took you guys this long to be like, "Wow, teams rocks."
We're a little
Let's
slow to
just like
adapt, but
let's
It's
just
the
get
we'll
a
get
old
there.
million
it's
team
the old
events.
Winston Churchill quote there. America's always gonna. I'm butchering it a little bit here, but essentially, it's America's gonna come around to the right thing to do
Yeah.
after they've tried everything else, and that's where we are with Teams
Yeah.
40K. That's
And
okay.
it's
Par for the course.
insane. The Challengers Cup sold out so fast, and that's the
Yeah.
largest 8-person team event in the world. And like that, boom. And we have a huge wait list. People are ready for it. So it's weird how that kind of just happened. Do you think that we're going to see more team events, Adam, in the U.S.? Obviously, we got the Challengers Cup. Do you think we're going to see more and more and more grow, or do you think there's
Yeah,
kind of a point where we can only do so many?
there will be a critical mass. So
Yeah,
teams events have a critical mass that is very separate to the singles events. Single events there isn't. You can just run as many as you can run.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But teams events is for every team that you get to the event, you can almost assume that one tried to form and didn't make it. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
and because of that, there is going to be a critical mass of how many people you can always just get through the door because people there is just scheduling issues. There's blah, blah, blah. And the more people you have in the team, the harder it is to keep the team together.
Totally.
Um, which is why WTC is essentially 8 players, and everyone's paying a bunch of money and playing for their nation, so you always get your 8 players, and then 8 players is actually quite rare to have throughout the world consistently.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
not gonna necessarily disagree with you on these parts, Adam, because it is when we talk about like America, like that's actually when I look and talk with different teams or I'm in different team discords, a lot of it is now starting to shift towards, oh, I'm planning out my calendar for the year. When
yeah,
are the team events?
Mhm.
And there's teams
correct.
that you're seeing come out of like the Northeast, the Boston area, which is where I'm from originally, pretty small and compact in the New England area. But now there are starting to be teams that are forming, out of there, teams out of the Ohio, Michigan, Midwest area, certainly the Mid Atlantic where I'm in, and we just saw.
Say Utah, just
Oh, I
that
mean,
helps.
yeah, Utah. Well, I mean, the Denver area has some great
Yeah,
players as
yeah,
well,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then
yeah, dude.
you've
Yes,
got a
they
lot
do.
of the guys from the Pacific Northwest as well, where that's starting to
Yep.
become its own self-contained kind of Shark Tank. But some of those younger, and that's a much younger scene, I think,
It
than what we
is. Yeah.
see for a lot of other areas in the U.S. And that's one of the things to me that's really interesting because when you see some of those guys, particularly from the Pacific Northwest, that they could be the kids, literally could be the kids of many of the players that you're seeing
Mhm.
winning these GTs. There's that much of an age difference, and to
Yeah.
me, that's
Yeah.
one of the parts where it's like Boston's kind of the same way, the Northeast is kind of the same way. And what is this next generation? As I've got my Star Trek Next Generation poster in the back, what are these like? What are they doing to change and shift the game? Because they got a long road to
They do.
But if they're
They do.
already good, they're
Yep.
going to be the ones pushing the meta in ways that we're not prepared for. I think that to me is
Exactly
really
right.
interesting.
All right.
Um,
Yeah. No, take it, Adam.
France is the only one I'd come back to, circle back to. The FEC, the French league that they run there, that essentially has buy-in from the entire community. Do you know how hard it is to unite Warhammer players? Anybody know? Kicker, you probably know
It's
this.
a challenge. It's a
It's
challenge.
pretty hard. For some reason, somehow, the French, of all people,
But
kudos to them. They have managed to get a united, like essentially Warhammer union of players, like that. They all just are in it together, and they're all happy and proud and contributing. And I think it is absolutely amazing. So
weren't
because of
didn't
that, I think they are the world leaders in organizing their community.
Adam, didn't they have their own like charcuterie boards and chef at WTC?
Yes, they
Okay,
had a
that's what the
cake.
secret is, right?
It is.
Like
It is.
Or
People will
meat.
come. Yeah, people will come to the
Warhammer is mostly men, so bring them meat and cheeses on a platter, and
Correct.
that's how you
Yep.
unify the entire country.
They had music going. They had a beautiful like the classic French table spread.
Yeah. They got
The
a
tablecloth,
baguette
sorry.
and some good
Yeah,
cheese.
yeah, exactly right. There's some baguette. They're walking around with some grapes, just kind of give them out now to other teams, of being like, "You wish you were us. We know it's okay. We're winning everything right now, so we can be generous."
All right, gentlemen. My job is to keep us on track. Question number 3 and our last key question for the night. What country produces the coolest tech or innovative strategies? We were talking about Kyle Grundy earlier. He did the Grundy maneuver that a lot of people know. This is that
Yeah.
that Tau thing, right? So is there any country that we see that's constantly like the ones with the coolest ideas that kind of other countries start to adopt?
So, I mean, I'll start with France again. I'll start
Yeah,
where I left
France.
off.
All right.
Coming out of the WTC, they were the forerunners. They discovered the ACDC tech before everybody else in the world.
ACDC, just
Yeah.
elaborate for some of us less.
The accursed cultist.
Oh, okay.
In
Yes.
dark commune, yeah.
With the dark communes, they were onto that literally like months before everybody else. No one else saw it really. In addition to the Unga Bunga Crusaders that Olivier won the singles with, and they went truly undefeated throughout the entire WTC. So they were probably up until the midway of last year, like they were unheralded. And then after WTC, they were like, wow, these guys are real meta pressure cookers. They are really pushing the envelope there. Poland is also well known for that. Australia is. I'll give Australia my little plug for the first time.
Yeah.
Australia and New Zealand are well known for their off-meta jank.
Yeah, I love it.
Um,
Off meta jank. Okay, give me an example from Australia.
So we're the innovators. So straight up, GSC wasn't even an army until Eric Athuris decided it was going to be an army. So as far as I'm concerned, the guy invented GSC because they didn't really exist until he started making them good.
Cool.
We can say the same for numerous other things, like Matt Morosoli taking various demon and or chaos knight brews before anybody recognized that just 13 war dogs will just run you over. Where he went undefeated at the WTC as well.
You would know this, Adam. I just heard rumors that an Australian won a tournament with, I think, Imperial Agents recently. Is that true? Is that a rumor? Okay, maybe that's a rumor.
Unconfirmed.
Unconfirmed.
I will look into that.
But
Okay,
yeah,
Imperial Agents did win a tournament. All right. What about the God Carpet? Was that an Australian innovation?
Yes, that was an Australian innovation. Same bloke I talked about with the GSC, and he invented the gaunt carpet. Went to the WTC that year, and we absolutely crushed it in Australia. Came in 4th, unfortunately, playing off for the win in 2019. But yeah, Australia's always been because it's such an isolated environment. We kind of brew our own meta because we just don't get that many chances to interact with the rest of the world. But because of that, we get to see the rest of the world brew on it and come up with our own solutions that are kind of at times they're created in echo chambers and don't work, but at times they're absolutely diamonds and can shine for the world to see. But New Zealand is also in exactly the same scenario. So I do not want to leave them out because they did extremely well at the last WTC, and they have a very unique, very interesting meta with some very good players.
Yeah, and I think this part kicker, you asked about country, but Adam, again, I don't necessarily disagree with you on these parts, but you kind of talked about some of and a lot of the players that you picked out, a lot of them are somewhat known as faction experts or specialists, right? And that's one of the things to me where it's like when you have these own micro environments, that allows players that are especially skilled, they know the environment, but then they're taking and seeing what's happening across other metas, applying some of those lessons into their own local, own little ecosystem. And once it has success at those parts, they catch like wildfire. So, I mean, I think obviously we mentioned Ridvin earlier, Skari with Drukari. Cleared away a winner. Matt Morosoli has been an innovator in demons for a long time, I think, in Australia. To me, it's again Kyle Grundy and Tau, or even like the Disgustingly Resilient podcast. Those guys. England, right?
Aiden Smalley. Well, you can go even further than that. Mark Hurdle, who just won the LVO.
He's in my backyard.
He's a Death Watch specialist.
Main, yeah.
And he
mains a specialist. That's the secret right here. Just watch the faction specialists because they're coming up with the tank. Okay, cool. Cool.
Jack Harpster as well. He won an LVO previous. It came in 3rd that year. Took Angelic Inheritors. One people thought was good, but wasn't as good as Liberator. Absolutely crushed it as well. He's another one. Faction expert of Blood Angels. He won the LVO and the ITC wielding Blood Angels. So he went for another run at LVO with Blood Angels. And so always look at these faction experts because they are the people that push the game forward. And they're the ones who change the boundaries of what is good and what is not and what you have to know how to beat.
Cool. All right, wild card question, guys. Adam, you first, of course. Do we actually think 40K is going to go mainstream? ever. Like I'm talking like big boy mainstream all the way. Do we think that's going to happen, or is it going to be always kind of this weird little sub hobby thing?
And kicker, when you're asking about this, are you talking about specifically like the gameplay and streaming, or are you talking more broadly, like
I was going to
everything?
focus on the gameplay.
Okay.
So we can divide it in two. First, let's go gameplay. Do you think 40K is going to be a thing that you just everyone and their neighbor is playing?
No.
No.
Yeah, I don't. I think it's such a niche.
Yeah.
It's such a time and money sorry, it's such a time investment on both the hobby front and the gameplay front that it's just a barrier to entry for especially young people, older people with limited time, and then it's just such a complex game that isn't for everybody.
Yeah, it is not.
It's just not for everybody. As for the sorry, I'll let Nick
Yeah,
answer.
Nick. What do you think, Nick? What do you think?
So when it comes to the gaming part of it, I again generally agree, but one part as it relates to, well, how can we take it to that next level, or what does it need to get to that next level? I think when it comes to streaming or streaming events and even just the large events themselves, there needs to be an introduction and an acceptance from the players as it relates to active judging when it comes to games on the top table. That's something where we really haven't been there and accepted it. But when you look at other types of events, and video games are a different environment, but typically card games, other things like that, those are more specifically monitored as it relates to the game being played and it being a fair game. I don't think we're ready at Warhammer to accept that part of it yet, but any kind of big sport, right? It's actively judged, right? If you're watching the Super Bowl, that's a sport that's actively judged. So that to me is the part where that comes along and the community accepts it. I think that's where we can unlock a new
Well,
viewer base.
sorry to take a tangent for a moment. I just
Do it,
wanted to
do
put in an anecdote.
Yeah.
So active judging is like a loaded word in 40K. It's so funny that we've decided to make judging a loaded word because no other sport has judging or active judging. It's just active judging. The NBA players don't get off the court after the game and because no fouls have been called and tell the umpire about all the fouls that happened. He pushed me in the third quarter. It wasn't good. The ref's just there, sees the freaking foul and calls the foul.
Calls it. Yep.
So why is it such a loaded term in 40K that have active judging, and then people feel like Uncle Sam's got their thumb on the back of their head telling them to be a good boy?
I think we have a topic for next week's episode.
Yeah, you got. I hadn't thought about it from like that perspective, where it's just like, yeah, like
It's just judging.
Yeah, it is,
Just
and you
judging.
accept that in every other sport, but yeah,
There's no active or inactive judging. There's just like this is how every freaking sport except ours does it. Why do we have a special term for it?
Okay. I'm dropping the active part, just judging from now on. You've already convinced me.
Yeah.
All right. Now let's talk about 40K as a wider concept. The media, the video games, potential movies, TV shows. Yes, is that going to go mainstream? Is that going to become the next Disney franchise, license?
It's going to try. I can't tell you if it's going to be successful. I think it will be. I think it will be. I don't think it'll be like Marvel successful or anything like that because it just doesn't have that mainstream appeal. Because ostensibly, if they are true to the law, there's a lot of bolter porn in there. There's a lot of just like Gears of War, Unga Bunga, turn your hat backwards and Halo like.
And
It's just a bit
it's
silly,
dark. It's dark. It's super
real
dark.
freaking dark.
Yeah, and that is polarizing. You're going to lose a large part of the audience if it's so dark, which also appeals to another part. But that whenever you have something that's polarizing, you kind of cut your market share. What do you think, Nick? Is it going to become the next big franchise, the next big Marvel?
100%. When Space Marine 2, the video game dropped, the number of people that reached out to me that had never talked to me about Warhammer before, but were like, "Oh man, I love this video game. You got to tell me everything about the Warhammer universe." I had so many messages, so many calls, DMs, like where that's the part where it is ripe for the taking. They just need to continue putting out good content, whether it's the video games, whether it's what Henry Cavill has coming to Amazon. Board games themselves are a great way to get kids involved in a way that's not at this whole scale. I mean, you already talked about for cost being prohibitive, but there's absolutely an opportunity for Warhammer to go more mainstream, and not just 40K, but Sigmar, Old World, Adam. I think across all of those areas. I mean, Vermintide is a hugely and Total War are hugely popular video games, still are. So,
question from the secret level. I don't know if this is public information, public knowledge out there, but do we know what episode from that secret level season was? What was the single most popular or most watched episode? I thought it was the Warhammer one, but that could just be me hoping, because that could be a cool indicator of what people are actually into. Yeah, I'm going to Google that. Right, like maybe because if that secret level episode was that successful, then that hopefully can begin the beginning of a very bright future
Yeah.
for more 40K media. So
So I'm of the opinion that the success of Warhammer and its stuff isn't in the hands of the audience, unfortunately. On this front, it's going to be in the hands of Games Workshop
yeah.
and the stories they choose to tell.
Yeah.
If they choose to just tell all the bolter porn stories, this thing will get old very quick. If they choose to tell a lot of the like the Horus Heresy did with especially the first 3 novels, where they interweave the human elements, the human stories with the super soldiers, with the demigods and all that stuff, and give people a little way to inject themselves into this setting and execute that well, this thing will have legs for years and decades to come.
Yeah, cool. Very cool. Very cool. Very cool. Hey, well, Nick, do you have any other questions? Any? Maybe we should figure out where people can find Adam, because obviously we love.
Oh
having him on
yeah,
the show.
Adam. So Adam, first and foremost, on behalf of myself and Kicker, thank you for accepting this epic challenge. We appreciate you having you on the show. But we mentioned at the top of the show, where people can find you, but you want to remind people, what platforms, how they can find out, and where they can hear from you on a regular basis.
So I am an absolute prolific
He's everywhere.
XY ho. I'm a ho for the content. I'm just on that content train, and I will not get off. You can find me at Art of War Down Under over on Patreon, or you can find me at the Competitive 40K Network to find the part 1s of that podcast. If you want to support me any further, come over and find me on Patreon, like I said. Warhammer Meta Chasers is a fantastic show that goes live at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We review and look and analyze the meta of the upcoming weekend's events, the biggest events of that weekend. We give you a full meta breakdown of every faction representation, so how many of each faction is going to that event, and then we pull out a bunch of the top lists, give you a breakdown there, and then we go over and review the post-event analysis over on the other side for the part 2 as well. If you want to get any of that goodness, come over and join me there. If not, join me on Forge the Narrative as well, which is a show which is Paul Murphy's show that I've been on for a good 5 years now, and it's absolutely a joy to record with Red and Tanya every week. Join me there. And lastly, I do an old world show called That Old World Charm. Lovely. It's with Peter the Falcon and Danny from Grim After Dark. How can that not be a good time? That Old World Charm. Go look it up.
I don't listen to many podcasts right now, but one of the few ones I always listen to, Art of War Down Under. I don't know, your reviews, your summaries are that's what I want. That's all I want, and it's provided in such an entertaining way. So thank you.
So I started that halfway through 2020. Yeah, so I started that in June of 2020. So I had 6 months sitting on my hands during COVID, not able to do much, and I was just sitting there I was just listening to 100 million podcasts, being like, what don't we have? What actually don't we have? We don't have an idiot sitting there reading everything out to people.
Nailed it, though.
Nailed it.
Because when I'm painting, that's what I'm listening to, right? That's
Correct.
just perfect. While you're painting, just listen to that. It's perfect.
And keeping up with the meta's a job.
Yeah, no, it is.
We have professional players who get rules wrong on the regular because this is hard. It's this hard work, keeping up with the rules releases and everything. So I try and take a little bit of that away from you, and you can absorb everything that's new for the game just by sitting there, going for a run, as I know Kicker does, and wetting a brush, doing what you please.
Awesome. Well, hey, Nick, you want to take us out?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so folks, make sure to check out Adam on any one of those. By the time you hear this, you might have another Warhammer podcast started. Who knows? But make sure to check out Adam on all those shows. And then from Kicker and I, thank you for joining Epic Challenge, and we will see you next week.
My pleasure to be here, boys. Thank you for having me.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Epic Challenge. If you enjoyed the show, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. And be sure to check out Green Banner Event Co., the ones who help make this show possible. Tune in next week for another Epic Challenge.